Talents Travels, Medora, Indiana. That is the East Fork of the White River. And spanning it is this, which is the longest historic covered bridge in the United States of America. This bridge is 460 feet long.
I'm Morris Tippin. I'm the troll that lives under the bridge, and we just try to welcome visitors here at the Medora Covered Bridge and tell them a little bit about the bridge. And the reason they covered the bridges is if they didn't, the timber would rot, to preserve the timber, and that's why they covered them. The first 7 boards on the bridge are original boards, and those had square nails in them, and we can tell what's original by the square nail, and these are the holes. But they were going to try to salvage as much of that as they could, but when they started taking it off, they realized that it was they weren't going to be able to reuse it, so we salvaged it. And we have several pieces of that, different size, and we're doing different things for fundraisers. We're working on a camera system for the bridge, and we keep the grounds mowed and just generally try to keep it looking nice for the public, and try to be available to answer questions. The arches are in 6 sections. Each section is a single tree. They could saw the slab, but they couldn't saw the curve, so they would lay it out on sawhorses and mark their slab top and bottom, mark the curve out of the slab, then saw down to the mark, probably with a crosscut saw, and then knock that block out and finish it off with a shaping tool called a foot adze, an ADZ. And then they would just butt them together and bolt them. And the seam is at every other king post, and then on the opposite king post at the back. So at some point the bolts go all the way through both sections of the arch without being at a seam. There's a 96-year-old gentleman here in town who passed away a while back, but I got a chance to talk to him, and he told me that he remembered there being wooden railing all the way down the middle of the bridge, and he remembered the horses and buggies and the early cars, that it was two-way traffic separated by that railing. And then in the late 20s or early 30s, he said they removed the flooring, replaced the flooring, but they didn't put the railing back down, and he thought that it was because the cars were getting too wide, and from then on it was one-way traffic. And
Okay.
You're on the pier right now, and there's a gap at the top, and the carpenter says that's for expansion and contraction. And there's a door here, and the door, the carpenter says that the reason they have those doors is to have access to the piers for inspection and maintenance. There's 2 doors over the piers on the north side. I mean, there's 2 doors in the bridge, and the doors were not there in the old siding, but the hinges were, and they had the square nails in them, which that's how we tell what's original, is by the square nails. And there is those are hand-hewed, those are called cords, and I couldn't figure out why they would hand-hew those when they sawed everything else. But the carpenter says, as far as he knows, the reason they did that is because they wanted them as long as they could get them without a gap. So they're like 40 feet long. And you cannot saw into a tree and saw it more than 16 to 20 feet and keep it straight because of the pressure in the tree. And the sawmill people tell me that's true, and so that's why if you want them longer than that, you have to do something else, and that's why they're hand hewed. That's the information that I have. And the flooring has been replaced. We say old bones, new skin. The truss is original, and that's, as I've already said, that's why they covered them, was to keep the truss from rotting. And so the outside has pretty much been replaced, the roof and the siding and the flooring. But on each side, there's 3 boards that on each side they're old boards. They're not original, but they are older boards. Well,
And-
wait a minute. Okay, there's a controversy over which bridge is longer, the Cornish-Windsor Bridge over the Connecticut River between New Hampshire and Vermont, or this bridge. And the issue is, how do you measure a bridge? Our engineer says the true measure of the bridge is the distance between the abutments at the end, and that is the span of the river. And from abutment face to abutment face, we're about 9 feet longer than they are. Their contention is that you measure by the truss, and because their truss is longer. And theirs is a lattice design, and it's a series of interlaced diagonals, and all those have to touch down. And it's all above the piers and the abutments. So in order to be stable, it has to go beyond the abutments. And so they say that you measure by the truss, and our engineer says once you pass the face of the abutments, you're not spanning anything. That's the end of the span. And you can make the truss go as long as you want, and it's a design choice, because in the arch design, the arches go into the piers and go into the piers and the abutments, and it's not necessary for them to go beyond the abutments because the strength of the bridge is within the abutments. So again, it depends on how you measure. I don't know.
But we are thinking it's so we're 460 feet.
462 feet.
462.
Roof to roof. And actually, roof to roof, we are longer. They're 460 feet. And the siding at the floor, we're 459 feet 3 inches, and they're 449 feet 5 inches. The siding at the floor, but their truss is longer.
Bridge was built in 1875. It took about 9 months to construct at a cost of $18,142. It was fully operational until 1973.